welcome to Exennial Geek. I'm your host, JC, and today we're going to go over the Superman legacy from Superman the movie in the 1970s all the way to the modern Superman that just came out in July. We're going to figure out which one's the best. Now, if you're a person like me who's an Exennial, you remember the Superman the movie, which I call the best. Now, the reason I say Superman is the best movie, Superman the movie, is because even with being lower graphics and all this kind of stuff compared to the nowadays stuff, at the same time, it was one of the first successful science fiction, like gigantically successful science fiction. It was in the late 70s, and right with it was Star Trek, the first ever made Star Trek movie, and Star Wars, which all grew to be huge storylines and franchises. And in my opinion, that was the beginning of the science fiction / comic book era. Because ever since those movies, the 80s was full of Batman and Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, more Star Trek. And then you go to the 90s, you have Transformers, you have more Star Trek, this time the next generation, along with a few other things. And then in the 2000s, you start off with the first comic book movies, which would be some of the successful Spider-Man movies. And with that, not too long after the Spider-Man movies became successful, you had the first Iron Man, which was the first gigantically successful comic book, even compared to the Spider-Mans. And that was the beginning of the Marvel Universe, which became the most successful in all universes. It still beats DC altogether. There's no question asked to that. And like I said, those three movies in the 70s, late 70s, were the beginning of the era. I don't think until who knows when, maybe it'll be sometime with Generation Z or something like that, that'll change what the favorite storylines are and stuff like that. But for now, it's the science fiction comic book era. Before the science fiction, you had the cops and all that stuff, and then before that, you had the westerns. And the westerns and the cops kind of stayed together a little bit during the 60s, 70s, 50s and stuff. But yeah, the late 70s was the first step in comic book science fiction era. And I believe it'll go on for decades. Because as long as the comic book companies and the science fiction still stick with the kids, like the Superman movie is doing, I explain later, it's going to be around forever. And I believe when it came to comic books, not just science fiction, but comic books, Superman, the movie, was the first step, and I believe the best for what it became and what it caused. Now, the rest, the modern stuff, still has a wonderful thing to it, like Man of Steel, Superman versus Batman, Justice League. Those are amazing movies with a good story to them, and it was kind of more in a leaning drama, serious movie way. Now, most people, there's a lot of fans that argue, why don't we have that legacy back? Why don't we keep going on with the Man of Steel whole universe? But the new Superman that just came out this summer, the difference is, and I mean, I understand. I loved the Justice League. I loved Man of Steel. I loved all of that. It was great. But the catch was, and I mean, the story was great, and it could go on and on and on. And I wish they could do that because it was a drama. It wasn't just your cartoonish Superman. The thing is, you got to be realistic. Because of like the Superman, Man of Steel, all his Netflix series, I can't remember what they call that, Witcher, all that stuff. Those were amazing things, and he did amazing stuff, but that made his price go skyrocketing to have him act. And from what I understand, because of DC having such a problem with keeping people in their legacy, like Marvel has had a magnificent thing with keeping true actors for their characters to stick to the plan. That's why, like, Iron Man had 3 movies, and he was also in all the Avengers. That's why Thor had 4 movies and was in all of the Avengers movies. That's why Captain America had like 3 of his own, and then he was in all Avengers movies. And that was all because Marvel had some kind of financial plan and contracts that made it so when they did this, if it was successful, they were not going to have to get new superheroes, and there would not be new contracts that were just skyrocketing in price. Man of Steel, on the other hand, they didn't do that because DC or Warner Brothers, they just don't do their contracts the same way, which is sad because if they could do it, it would be amazing, like literally amazing. And, so that's why, financially, that's why the Man of Steel legacy will not go on. Now, do I like the drama talk to it? Yeah, it's really good. It makes it more serious. It makes it more than just some funny comic book thing. At the same time, this Superman that just came out, the thing is, it's not a drama. It's more funny, just down to bone. It's still a Superman. You still have Lex Luthor. You have monsters he has to fight, and you don't start with, and I like this, you don't start from the original. Everybody over all these years has seen how Superman was created. This is one of the first movies where they already know people know this because of all the comic books, the movies, the cartoons, all of that is shown where Superman came from. So now they're just starting off after he became Superman, which is interesting. And in this movie, with it being a little bit less serious, not the drama like Man of Steel, the catch is, so yeah, we love it as adults. I'm an exennial. I love Superman. I'm a geek all the way. And I've loved that stuff since I was a child in the 90s and 80s and all that stuff. Like, it's, been the best. I've loved it. The catch is, I hate to say this because this is on me, but we're getting old. No offense. We're getting old. Soon, we'll be old enough that, like, right now we've already got it that they're playing our old movies, our radio stuff, all the stuff we grew up with. That's what they're playing in all the commercials because we're the consumer generation right now. That's how come also, like, when these these theaters for, like, Warner Brothers and Universal and Paramount Plus and stuff, when they try and do remakes of things like Ghostbusters, or if they try and do one of Back to the Future and stuff, it's just going to fail because we saw it in our childhood and we love it. We don't want new things. Now, the next generation, when they become the marketing generation, that's a different story. Maybe they'll be open to it, but they'll have their own things that they liked in the past. For us, we got to go on. And so this new Superman, being a little bit more comic related, less drama altogether, it's less stuck to the drama. It's more comic book themed, more funny, just a Superman thing. It is actually made to catch more into the next generation, which, we got to keep a sense into that. These guys, if you want DC to go on, you want Marvel to go on, you want any of this stuff to go on from just us watching it, there's going to have to be a new generation to watch it. And no offense, but kids are not going to want to start with the drama. Man of Steel, all the pain, all the action, all the blood that was kind of, the way, he lost his family, all that kind of stuff. Like, that's not a kid thing. It might have been rated PG-13, but like, nowadays you're talking, like this Superman, it doesn't even almost fit as PG-13. It fits as for kids. So like, I could bring my nephew who's 8 years old. I could show him the Superman movie, and I really wouldn't have to worry about any kind of inappropriate information for him. So even if I would say the Man of Steel legacy would be great, and I'd want more, got to be logical that this is just the new way. They're going to do this. Now, there are things about Warner Brothers possibly being bought by Paramount Plus, and with that, you never know what Paramount Plus will do. Maybe they'll make more, and like Marvel's doing and some of DC's kind of doing, where it's multi-universe. Well, maybe they'll have the Man of Steel universe, and then maybe they'll have the recent Superman universe. You never know. It all depends. But that is a whole thing going on. Paramount Plus hasn't put a price down for Warner Brothers, but if they do, they still have people to go against them, like Amazon, Netflix, even Disney. All would see that, like Warner Brothers, as a huge advantage of money. Besides news in it and stuff, you have DC, and you have a couple other ones that are just will give you money because they're so popular. So yeah, with this, you got to think of it as, an adult. I mean, as an exennial geek, I love every comic that pretty much come out. All the movies that come out, I can have criticism for them, but I love them. It's my childhood becoming reality as an adult. Nowadays, I don't feel as much like a geek or as if that's an insult or something when I was a child. Because if you're an exennial like me, back in the old days, like playing D&D, some of the video games, having, liking all these comic books and stuff like that, that was looked down on by like all of our classmates and all these other people. Like, we were just the geeks. Like, what the hell are you doing? But then look what happened. You go into the modern time, we're the marketing class, and guess what? We're the people that they want to get stuff. So that's why they have these movies that are going for us and stuff. And even with that, you've got things like some of our generation are the people in charge of these things. So we know what we would like and what we'd probably buy. It's not all the older generation that runs some of this entertainment stuff. So personally, I don't want to say Man of Steel should be over. I don't want to say it wasn't good as it was. It was amazing, but we got to think realistic on the market. This new Superman is probably what's going to stay. And they've already got plans for Supergirl. In Man of Steel universe, they never made a Supergirl. They didn't even introduce her in anything. So that's a new character. And yeah, so, let's go with it. Let's try. It ain't, I hate to say, Man of Steel legacy is over, but for now, until something happens, this new Superman will be the thing. And I think it's a pretty good movie, even with it being kind of less violent and more of a joke to it and stuff, and some of that stuff. I mean, it's great. I love that it came out. It made money. I mean, I know there was a whole discussion on if it was a failure or not compared to markets and stuff. That's a long story. I don't even want to try and get into that. But, I mean, like, you have Supergirl at the end. That's great. I love this super dog. I can't remember what that dog's called. But that was amazing, having the dog in this whole thing, and that being, like, the main reason Superman was what he was trying to save was the dog. He was trying to get his dog back, and then he goes against Lex Luthor. And I love that Lex Luthor, who is like the most asshole in the world, gets everything thrown in his face, and like he fails completely and all this other stuff. So that, we all hate Lex Luthor. or most of us do. So yeah, Superman was pretty good. I liked it. I'm hoping the next couple of movies are good, and I hope this kind of goes into its own universe. And if they do this right, which I hope they do, they make it so it's not the same way Man of Steel is, where they have a problem with paying these actors or paying for the movies, or getting so critical about the movies that they won't even make them come out because they're so worried about if they'll make their money and stuff. These movies will make their money. I mean, it's a comic book stuff. Most of these movies, if you make a good movie and it's not just a complete piece of shit, you're going to make your money back in theater, in DVD, and running on Netflix and stuff, or Paramount Plus, or whatever you got. You make all the money from people watching that. So you're still going to have your thing. And they need to get their head out of their ass and be future planning on stuff and not so done with the old ways. But I got to go. But just to let you know, JC Jewel is my author name. And there is a dystopian novel that I made called Rift of Redemption. Check it out. Amazon. You can also get it on Walmart, Target, Apple, ebook, and paperback. So go for it. Check it out. Anyways, I will talk to you later. Have a good day, geeks.